Daily Gay Evening News Show, and it's 7 p.m. Wednesday, March 25th, 2020. Tonight, we queue up breaking Q news by reporting an interesting new map that Kenda Health is doing. It is a map of the United States showing illnesses by temperature and showing that Florida is literally too hot to handle. Now, as we discuss this story, Kenda Health is starting to appear kind of as a backdoor agent in terms of trending what is going on in coronavirus. This is a software company that sells thermometers, and they link all of the thermometer readings that are taken by the purchasers of the thermometers, and then they're tracking where fever is taking place and how it is modifying. That image that you see right now is really bringing Q News Tonight to a complete stop. We are broadcasting here from Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We talk about being the gayest place on planet Earth, and you can see the glowing reddish color in Florida. You see hot spots of New York, Florida, and also in Colorado. And it is being reported that this is a good indicator of what we are going to see in coronavirus expansion in the next 12 to 21 days. A lot of breaking Q news on coronavirus tonight. We're going to get into some specific stories later. But guys, anything in particular you want to remark on Kenda's findings about the use of the thermometers?
You know, it's interesting. I've made references to this in the past. You know, you do love Hooked on Phonics, and with that, I'm happy to see that you're also practicing maps as well.
Yeah.
Oh, 50 nifty United States.
Really, we're gonna start this right at the top of the show tonight.
All seriousness, that is very concerning to see that Florida's in the high category, in particular because of the senior population that we have living here, and they're all the most vulnerable and susceptible to contracting that of coronavirus.
That's true. We do have two really strong populations that we have to be paying attention to: the senior population, as you just described, and also the LGBTQ population, who is known and being pleaded with by ERs across our state to stop hooking up, to stop having irresponsible behavior, which once again, we beseech you today from Q News Tonight.
Yeah, which we're going to talk about. Yeah, exactly.
We're going to continue to talk about it because it's important, and it's what we're indicating is the future. Right now, Andrew Cuomo in New York is saying that they are the epicenter and that they are looking to Italy for what to happen next, and that they are what we are looking forward to in the rest of the country. Very soon, Florida, I have warned my family, is going to be right there. So if you do live in this state, make sure you're taking all of the precautions. Thank you for watching this, to make sure you're doing all of those things to stay safe and inform those that you love.
To the LGBT community all over the United States that are watching us right now, the governor of the state of Florida had an ominous warning today. He did a press conference from the Orlando Convention Center that is being converted, like the Jacob Javits Center in New York, as an emergency crisis center in Orlando. But he reported something that was very interesting about New York. He said on March 9th, as the crisis began to unwind, there was to Orlando only one flight from New York to Orlando. Then, after New York declared the lockdown emergency that the governor and the mayor of New York declared, the next day there were something in the neighborhood of 7 flights to Orlando. The day after that, there were 42 flights to Orlando. And the day after that, again, almost 50 flights to Orlando. And it is why the governor of Florida instituted this 14-day quarantine order from Flight Connection and people that were coming from New York. Because basically, people were doing the same thing, he suggested, like what we watched out of China, which is people were leaving China and they were going to other places in the world and having significant infection rates. If you make the connection to Kenda Health in terms of the temperature thermometers, we're beginning to see anecdotally the evidence that that is true. New York is the epicenter now of the coronavirus in the United States and perhaps the entire world, and we're watching that epicenter move to the state of Florida. So that's what we're watching.
But just to be clear, this is with at least some amount of time that we can prepare. It does sound like doom and gloom, but there is the opportunity now for everybody to at least start paying a little bit better attention, start taking even more precautions that we've been advising, and really start that social distancing that is accepted and required.
Yeah, just to echo that, I mean, that's just why it's so important for people to follow the 14-day quarantine. I do expect very soon, if it's not the governor, then I will expect other municipalities to continue to fall in line. I think somewhere between 30 and 40 cities have already done it across the state of Florida, where they've mandated stay-at-home orders. I do think that the governor eventually will get there in a couple of weeks when it does start to progressively get worse, especially in South Florida. I do think that that will happen. But I think that mainly cause and effect, essentially, will be people coming from the epicenter of this disease, which would be New York State, New York City, coming here because of the warmer climate to get away from that, and in return, bringing that virus here.
Well, we are the only live LGBT news in the entire world, and of course, we are focusing on the crisis of coronavirus. So this story is very big news. And also, LGBTQ America and the world, we remind you, we're very concerned at Q News tonight about the hinting that the President of the United States is in releasing social isolation by Easter. And the Kinder temperature maps may be an indication of how dangerous that decision may be. So we're going to follow that very closely, and we're going to be listening to the medical advice, not the political advice, coming out from the committee. One other thing that we wanted to report, there's so much news today in Corona, is about age specifications. New York's Governor Mayor Cuomo reported today for the first time that in the statistical analysis of the gigantic numbers that we're watching in New York as the epicenter of coronavirus, that 46% of all new transmissions are bucking the trend of what anecdotally we were hearing. This is an old person's transmission disease. In New York, Governor Cuomo indicated that is not the case. 46% of new transmissions are between the ages of 18 and 44 years old. So already New York is beginning to show signs of information of the correctness that this is being contracted by everyone. One other thing in big news that we want to report on Corona is we have reported tremendously about what's happened in the New York Stock Exchange and Dow Jones. Just need to update you in terms of where we're at. Today we had a 600-point gain in the New York Stock Exchange after a very significant gain yesterday. Year to date, since January 1, the New York Stock Exchange Dow Jones is down 21% year to date through today, March 25th. However, as significant as that number is, the effect that it has on your retirement accounts, your 401s, thank you, and other related finances, in the overall scheme of things, it is not that significant. The New York Stock Exchange over the last 5 years, as of today, is still up by 24% in the last 5 years. And over the last 10 years, the New York Stock Exchange reporting number is up 109%. So while we're down 21% year to date for 2020, the overall numbers in the New York Stock Exchange and Dow Jones are still very good. And we provide that information as a balance to the reality of what is really going on. That's the first news that we want to report on tonight on Corona. And again, we welcome you to Q News tonight. We are live and unscripted, so anything can happen. Tonight, we bring you the news and of a perspective from the LGBT community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and these are my co-anchors. We're going to go a little slower tonight, Aaron Darr, and my co-anchor, Napoleon Plays. So let's cue up the news. And as we go to our opening of Q News tonight, it's 7 p.m. Wednesday, March 5th, and it's time for us to queer up the news. We are out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories tonight, next on Q News Tonight.
Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight.
We begin tonight at Queuing Up the USA. We report that New Orleans is the center of the coronavirus and Mardi Gras is to blame. Before we talk about this story, we prepared a package on it. Watch this.
With the spread of coronavirus across the country, it wasn't long until Mardi Gras in New Orleans became a talking point.
My understanding is they traveled for Mardi Gras.
This after health leaders in Arkansas, Tennessee, and Texas say coronavirus patients in their states recently made trips to New Orleans, where they possibly contracted the virus. Health leaders say one person from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, and two friends from Memphis, Tennessee, were in the city during Mardi Gras. The Shelby County Health Department director in Memphis says those two patients are over the age of 40 and doing well, but it's unclear how the virus spread to them.
New Orleans is becoming another epicenter of this disease across the country and across the world. And what is being blamed right now is Mardi Gras, which of course is part of Carnival and takes place January 6th to February 25th. Approximately 1.4 million people travel to New Orleans and Louisiana during that time frame. And New Orleans has about 567 of the 1,400 almost cases, with 20 out of 46 deaths that have happened in Louisiana. Now, this is one of many giant parties. The real question here is, it was with enough time. Trump could have prepared us back in January. We've discussed that many times. This event was happening at a time that they could have been warned, that people could have been warned, and that our negligent government did not help keep people safe. And unfortunately, there's many of these events that might have followed suit. We were talking about Winter Party here just a couple of weeks ago here in South Florida, a large LGBT circuit party that is funded by the National LGBTQ Task Force that did not have the opportunity because of the president to actually cancel the events. And so more and more we're seeing that these large events not being canceled because of our federal government's failure to act is causing significant epicenters and potentially and soon hundreds of thousands of deaths.
Well, I wanna challenge you on that notion because, and I'm not gonna at all stand up for Donald Trump in this, but he is not solely to blame with this. We want to really place the blame at this as well. We all have a moral obligation and social responsibility to each other, to not necessarily look to the federal level of government and the misinformation campaign that's been brought forth by the Trump administration, but really the organizers of said events, so the LGBT task force. They knew that this was an ongoing issue, and they could have, like a lot of other event organizers, made that very important decision, as has AIDS Walk and Pride of the Americas and countless other organizations here in South Florida canceled that event. Same thing with the Winter Party. So I'm not going to solely blame Donald Trump. I think that we also have to hold our organizers and organizations to the same standard that we do President Trump.
This story is a gigantic story in the LGBT community. And the reason it is I've been to Mardi Gras more than a dozen times. I'm in crew of Orpheus, Harry Connick's crew, legendary crew in Mardi Gras. This event is super attractive to the LGBT community, and a very significant number of that 1.2 million visitors was LGBT. Yes. But this is a red light call to action for us, because what has happened here is over the course of the last 10 days, New Orleans has had the highest incidence of new transaction of coronavirus of any place in the entire world. And the medical community suspects it is because of the time frame of reporting now from Mardi Gras. And as a result, it proves that social isolation is a critical issue. Mardi Gras completely violates that concept of Bourbon Street and Royal Street and the parades and all of the parties, etc., which I love too. But for the LGBT community, Mardi Gras is proof that we cannot continue over the short order of the next 15, 30, 60 days to continue to operate the way we do in the LGBT community. Mardi Gras proves it. New Orleans proves it. And we should be paying attention to this story.
That's absolutely correct. And I just have to take another moment to plead, because Mardi Gras is giving us another example, another opportunity for the LGBTQ community to look forward and see what our 10-day forecast, what our 2-week forecast is. I agree with everything that you said, Aaron. There's a lot that organizations can do. However, individuals can take action right now, so can the organizations. We are about 2 weeks ahead of what we could see happen. We're watching that right now with New Orleans. Play that back to yourself. What actions have you taken in the last 2 weeks, and what actions can you fix in your next 2 weeks to make sure that you and the ones that you love are not going to be harmed? Now is the time to act. Now is the time to spread that information, and now is the time to make sure that you are being a human of society and a civilian that can help others.
Yeah, absolutely. We continue in queuing up the USA tonight by reporting that the Senate and the White House have reached an enormous $2 trillion stimulus deal with fears of coronavirus growing. Before Aaron reports on this story, we've prepared a package about what has happened today. Watch this.
Well, Madam President, I have an update for the information of all senators and for the information of the American people, and it's good news. It's good news for the doctors and nurses in emergency rooms around the country who are waiting for more masks and more funding. It's good news for families all across America. At last, we have a deal.
As our viewers just saw in that video, Senate Majority Leader, the third time is the charm. So the Senate and the White House have reached an enormous deal, a $2 trillion stimulus deal with fears of coronavirus growing. What is the objective of said stimulus deal? And that is to flood the U.S. economy with money. So a little bit more of a breakdown, because I think it's important to note what this $2.2 trillion stimulus package does. So it's $1,200 for most adults. So what is the stipulation for most adults? You had to have filed taxes in 2018, and you have to have make under $75,000 a year. $500 per child in a household. Now this has changed from the first two stimulus packages. This third stimulus package that's now been passed in the Senate as well as the House and will be signed this evening by President Trump includes 4 months of unemployment insurance rather than 3. $130 billion has been allocated and earmarked towards hospitals. $150 billion has been allocated towards state and local government spending. $350 billion, actually more specifically, $367 billion is allocated towards small businesses. And that big $500 billion number is going to be allocated towards corporations. So a lot of people are saying, why did it take us so long to get here? Well, this is what the Democrats were trying to do to essentially regulate and have oversight of all of these funds, especially that big $500 billion number, to make sure that if corporations are going to get a bailout, if you will, in the stimulus package, that those funds are going to be spent on their workers, and that those funds are going to be given to the workers that help to produce those very important funds for the said corporation.
What do you think about the spike in the $500 billion corporate allocation that the Senate specifically excludes any businesses associated with Donald Trump, Pence, or any of the other political leadership in the cabinet, et cetera, to ensure that the Trump organization and his hotels cannot benefit from this package?
Well, I mean, better late than never. I think that we should have done this at some other point. I mean, we have a president right now that literally makes money off of being president.
Which is illegal. We have
it's
an emoluments
illegal,
clause that's
yes,
supposed to keep him from
exactly.
being able to do that.
It's so I'm glad to see that Democrats and Republicans are really taking that to heart. But more than anything, I mean, Nancy Pelosi is really. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are really responsible for a lot of the specifics of this bill and a lot of the regulation and oversight that we're seeing in this stimulus package versus the other two versions of the stimulus package. A lot of that I really equate to Nancy Pelosi, and Donald Trump actually has been really with Nancy Pelosi on this issue. It's really been Senate Republicans, mainly Leader Mitch McConnell, that's been holding this up when Pelosi and Trump have really been trying to work together to bring relief to the American people.
It's a broad area that we're going to continue
Yes.
to watch,
I
of
think
course.
Samantha Bee said it best, that he's been undermining the country and chipping away at it like a little gopher. But speaking of her voice, we also have ours, and we want to ask you, while she's not a part of our community, well, maybe an ally, are LGBT voices important to you? Can the news of the world have a gay community perspective? If you, like us, think the answer is a resounding yes, then like and subscribe to Q News Tonight on YouTube and Facebook. Do our gay cultural stories impact you, your friends, and your family? Start a watch party. Get your circle involved in our conversation as it supports the entire gay community.
We cue up religion tonight by reporting that U.S. Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio, assures anti-LGBTQ churches they will get stimulus money. Before we discuss this, we prepared a package on that. Watch this.
So the package that I've been tasked with establishing for the Senate that we've been working with a team on is open to nonprofits and basically churches, but and other nonprofit groups, small business and not-for-profits. Whatever your overhead normal operating costs are, primarily, your rent and lease or, cost of real estate and your payroll that existed before this crisis. There's a couple different metrics. One of them is what was it on March 1st? Whatever that is, we're going to lend you 4 times that, or we're going to give you 4 times that. And a year from now, we're going to look at, you're going to show your books, and if you spent that money that you took out from this program through your bank for purposes of maintaining payroll and paying your overhead, so your lights didn't go out and that sort of thing, it's going to be forgiven. If you used it or a portion of it for any other reason, then that portion of it or that would become a loan.
This was a call with Senator Marco Rubio, former presidential candidate in 2016, calling the Florida Family Policy Council, the FFPC, which is allegedly an anti-LGBT conference call that he was on. Now, that organization has ties to Rubio, ties to anti-conversion therapy or conversion therapy, to anti-marriage equality, but there's a lot more to the story than that. Now, what this benefit would do, this would benefit a lot of 501c3s if this were to pass, not just potential anti-LGBTQ groups, but also those like the business that we're within right now, the World AIDS Museum, and making sure that money that they're given can be reallocated back. In fact, they will be getting potentially 4 times the amount of money if they are able to show that they're spending it in a correct way rather than just needing it as a loan, which is the alternative. So hopefully we see a lot of people take use of this in an appropriate way and not try to scam it.
Well, I want to say, this already has passed today. This is part of the stimulus package that we were talking about. And under this umbrella for churches, 501c3 nonprofits like the World AIDS Museum and Educational Center, this $367 billion is allocated towards small businesses. So whether it be, if we want to put it in the lens of it being anti-LGBT, a lot of these churches, outside of whatever their opinions are of the LGBTQ community, they really do a lot of good for many other people outside of their LGBT views.
Yeah. We continue in queuing up the world tonight by reporting on South Korea's online sex crime scandal. It's sending ripples throughout Asia. Aaron, tell us about what's going on here.
Yeah, so a really heartbreaking story here. And some of the stories that we've covered in the past, we've talked a lot about revenge porn, and that's essentially what this story is. It's a chat room, also known as Telegram, where a digital sex crime scandal is attracting victims with false advertisements, so fake advertisements of job opportunities. So in the process, they've lured, that we know of, 74 women and 16 underage girls, and they're blackmailing them with sexual images. And they're also, this is the disgusting part really, they're also blackmailing them to send videos of themselves to violently hurt themselves and perform violent acts on themselves if they do not comply with what the user in the chat room is asking them to do. Outside of this, 124 people have already been arrested in South Korea. And essentially what this is child porn. This is revenge porn, and this story is going to continue to develop in South Korea.
Yeah, a lot of what this reminds me of is from the whole Momo incident that happened a couple of years ago, the art piece that inspired fear in a lot of people and then inspired a lot of people from various parts of the country to slowly engage people to just do one task and then end up killing themselves. And this is the kind of problem that we face when we're looking at these types of people that are looking to either harm others or just want to be leading a cult. Because what a cult looks like today in 2020 is not the same thing that it was a few decades ago with the punch. We have to be really careful.
I'm curious to the observation you just made. Can you see something like this happening in the American LGBT community?
It already does.
It happens all the time, especially in a community that wants so badly to be accepted and loved. I know that we're going to talk on that later with a sports member that wants to promote people being accepted and being open for who they are. It's difficult. It's a lot more difficult if you're part of our spectrum in the LGBTQ community. And of course, we can be much more easy prey because of that.
Yeah. You know, this is a story that, of course, 124 people have been arrested, so it's going to continue to play out. And as it does, Q News Tonight is going to follow it every step of the way, because Q News Tonight is part of the Happening Now television network. As you know, we are the Daily News. We are also part of the most popular live gay TV show in the world, every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on It's Happening Out. And guess what, boys and girls? It's Wednesday, and it's almost 8 p.m.
Wait,
make
it's
sure
Wednesday?
It's Wednesday,
Wednesday.
yes.
I didn't know the world knew what day it was anymore.
And as we often say, it's a talk show like television's The View, but with a whole lot of LGBT people.
That's exactly true. We continue tonight by queuing up sports. And just to prove that we can, 10-time Irish national triple jump champion Denis Finnegan has come out. It was big news in this sports area. We've prepared this package. Watch this.
Yeah, look, it's obviously, look, we're in very interesting times at the moment and all the rest. I suppose that was one thing that really has pushed it forward. But no, it's taken a time. I think, like, when I met you that time, even like the thought of doing this, there's always was like questions in my mind about, like, oh, should I or shouldn't I, or who would listen to it? And, you know, it's this whole kind of I think thing of how being gay has kind of affected my life in a way. It's that, like, you're always questioning, oh, you know, who knows, who doesn't know, or what can I tell people and all the rest. So
now, this is, of course, national track star Denis Finnegan, and he wants to inspire more people after having 10 different national tribal jump championships. He wants to make sure that other LGBTQ people younger than myself, younger than Aaron, have the ability to know that, yes, it's 2020, but it can still be difficult to come out. A lot of what we face is mental. We were just discussing this, that a lot of our coming out stories, even today, are all about the mental, internal process, and that it's difficult to expose those self-issues to try to get over yourself. Now, if you're confused, as Aaron was just reminding me about a triple jump, I loved it because they described it as a hop, step, and a jump. I know you're not the sports guy, that's why they gave this to me, but it was a lot more fun.
Really? Really?
I at least ran
You're
there.
a sports guy?
I'm a sports guy. Just don't ask me to drive a car very well this week, apparently.
The only game I see here is the one that I can play in your shirt with tic-tac-toe.
I wish you knew Animal Crossing as well then too. But we're moving forward into finding out how we can help other people in our community, because he is just another great example, not just because he's Australian and obviously I could listen to that accent for a while. He's really being a good advocate for coming out and for making sure that the mental health issues that the LGBTQ community faces at youth and at older ages can be addressed.
Right along with that good story that we're able to tell tonight, we start to finish Q News tonight by queuing up good news. And this is an interesting good news story because it has to do with Pornhub. Pause. Pornhub gives New York City coronavirus healthcare workers free masks and free porn. Napoleon, tell us what Pornhub is doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for this story, Al. So Pornhub is obviously one of, if not the top-rated porn sites in the entire world. And right now, after first giving a series of hundreds, or I think it was 50,000 masks to Europeans that needed them as it was breaking out in the UK, and then giving them free access to their site, they are now making waves here in the USA. They have over 50,000 masks that have been donated to hospitals, to the New York Police Department, and to the New York Fire Department. They are in the process of donating $54,000 in medical supplies to Europe as far as ventilators and other necessary items go. And they've even helped their models who used to only pocket 65% of their earnings and have helped them to raise that to 85% so that their self-employed people that are working through them can actually continue to work and make a living when a lot of sex workers right now are not. In addition to that, they're pledging $25,000 to a program called Sex Workers Outreach, and they are going to help just continue with sex workers. I keep saying sex, you're smiling at me because of that. But they're really doing a lot in our community, and it's truly incredible. I encourage more people of any variety in our community, LGBTQ or otherwise, to continue to donate, because this is how you make a difference. Give free porn and also free supplies, and people will love you.
You know, it's very interesting to me. I'm very jealous here to this story. It'sHappeningOut.com is the number 23,000 most popular website in the world for the LGBT community. We have nothing on Pornhub.
Yeah.
Pornhub is the most popular LGBT site in the world.
Yeah.
So we have to give Pornhub props for giving back to the New York community.
That's
All right. Well, that is our good news tonight. And tonight we remind you that we are broadcasting from our studio set in the middle of the World AIDS Museum and Education Center here in Wilton Manors in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We always joke we're broadcasting from the gayest place on planet Earth, and you can tell by many of our stories tonight that is really true. We also thank our set designer, Concepto Modern Living, right here in Fort Lauderdale, for the construction of this set. Next, we have the big finish. This is how we're going to end our show tonight. There are many stories we only want to mention. Let's see if Aaron and Napoleon and I can entertain each other as we have a lightning round on the LGBT news of the day and news with an LGBT perspective. So here we go. Q News Tonight, the big finish. Big finish story number 1. Hillary Clinton mocks Trump by saying, quote unquote, "Do not take medical advice from a man who looked directly into a solar eclipse."
Yes, just don't take advice at all from Donald Trump.
God, I really hope that every single day can come from a tweet from Hillary Clinton just mocking Trump. I would be happier, and I think it would help us get through Corona.
Actually, I wonder if the sun is hurt. Every day the sun is looking directly into Donald Trump's eyes. I know my eyes burn just watching the daily circus that they call the White House Corona briefing. 85 days later, and there is still no widespread testing, and states are scrambling for leadership. Yep, Dr. Hillary Clinton's diagnosis seems to be right. The big finish. A new study proves that birds are smarter in the city than in the countryside because they think more and they have more sex.
Yes, so feed the birds. Tuppence a bag. Tuppence, tuppence, tuppence a bag.
I only wish that half of our own city here in Wilton Manors could abide by the same thing and have more sex to be a little bit smarter.
Considering I know how much sex Aaron and Napoleon get, and how much sex I get, and the fact that I live in a city, and Gen Z or Aaron and Millennial Napoleon live in some place called Green Acres, yep, this story seems to check out pretty clearly. The big finish. Spring breaker who vowed to party despite coronavirus concerns has now apologized.
So I just want to know, after this quarantine is over, when do the producers of My 600-Pound Life call me? Or how does this work?
Listen, I really, really commend this spring breaker. I hope that he could use this as some kind of retribution because there are tons of people that are partying here in Wilton Manors, in Fort Lauderdale, and they don't need to be partying. If he can get people to stop doing that and to stop hooking up, I will personally do whatever I can to make sure that I can help in that endeavor.
Poor, stupid college student. That's one more apology than Donald Trump has given during his entire presidency. See, LGBTQ America, there's hope for young America. Not repeating the same egocentric mistakes of the past.
Please.
Please, insert your millennial joke here.
It's our opportunity, millennials.
The big finish. 57% of the LGBTQ people in America think their lives are going to be worse off in 6 months due to coronavirus.
Coincidentally, 57% or more of LGBTQ people think that their lives will be worse off if Donald Trump is reelected as president.
I hope it's more than that. I think 57% of LGBTQ people just think that in 6 months they still might not be getting enough sex, and then they're really concerned.
I don't know if that's true, but it does seem that this shows a surprising optimism or demonstrates how much of our local community have very hard lives to begin with. But this will pass, and it will be better than you think. A new hero of mine, New York Governor Cuomo, was literally talking to the LGBT community today when he said, you are so needed. In this emergency briefing, our closeness makes us vulnerable, but our closeness is what makes us special. So to the 57% of you that think life is going to worsen in the LGBT community, our closeness is going to make us special. The big finish. 8 men were arrested today after hosting a cocaine-fueled orgy during a coronavirus lockdown.
Since when does Andrew Gillum do cocaine?
Might have been recently reported, but all I could see was 8 men, cocaine and orgy, and I'm just assuming that both of you are already lost and out of the system right now, running out into the streets.
Well, I have to piggyback on Aaron's joke. I guess we should be glad that Florida gubernatorial candidate Andrew Gillum wasn't at this one too. The big finish. Happy 73rd birthday to Elton John. We love birthdays at the big finish at Q News tonight.
Yes, so coincidentally, from orgies to Elton John, a very happy 73rd birthday.
I absolutely hope that you are isolated. We need more of your music. I need to have more of your gay, fabulous, Liberace life in my life. Please, please, please stay around and be safe. We love you here in the LGBTQ community.
Elton John, how can you not love someone who told the New York Times just 5 years after the Stonewall March, there is nothing wrong with going to bed with someone of your own sex. People should be very free with sex. They should just draw the line at goats. Elton John was the soundtrack of the LGBTQ and our lives. He proved to all of us, I'm still standing. He sang to us at the gay bar, can you feel the love tonight? The next morning he preached, don't go breaking my heart. He was every gay man when he sang, don't let the sun go down on me. He partied with us at our circuit parties with Benny and the Jets. He told us we were all brothers by calling us Daniel. And he captured our love for women by first memorializing Marilyn and then 30 years later, Diana, with his heartbreaking Candle in the Wind. He was with us every step of our lives. So truly, happy 73rd birthday, Elton John. The big finish. On this day in 1965, Martin Luther King leads a group of 25,000 to the state capitol in Montgomery, Alabama.
And on this day in 2020, the United States of America still has a racist in the White House.
Well, that's definitely true, but also on this day, a new petition is being led that will potentially change forever the idea that LGBT people who have not been able to donate blood since 1976 might now finally start be able to donate blood because we're in an emergency crisis with corona where blood is needing to be donated, and maybe this is our opportunity to be given equality for the first time. First time in our lives anyway, and now you've been around forever.
A civil rights protest, and 4 years later, a protest was also heard around the world that took place in New York. It was called Stonewall, and the modern gay civil rights movement began. Today, we need a Martin Luther King or a Marsha P. Johnson, because I am hoping that we march on the White House tomorrow to say, as it comes to our president and coronavirus, they are the same. Enough is enough. So let's start marching. That is today's news for the LGBT community on the world's first daily gay evening news show. Remember, if it's important to the LGBT community, it's important to Q News Tonight. But you must help us. Click subscribe on YouTube and share the news that you've heard tonight. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. This is the only source of live LGBTQ news in the world, and your community now needs your support. You are not alone. We are going to get through this crisis. We are here with you, and this is Q News Tonight. We thank you for joining us, and I'm Al Ferguson, and on behalf of Aaron Darr and Napoleon Plays, we'll see you tomorrow night at 7 p.m.